and get. All right, so welcome. I'm Mary Birch Harmon. I work with Education USA from the US. I'm currently in the US right now. So it's fun that I get to see you, even though we're not in the same country at this moment. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we're going to go ahead and get started. So today we are going to be talking about writing your CV and your resume in English. So I hope to get a chance to cover both of those topics and give you some information that you can take away with you so you can practice. So if you don't know me, like I said, I'm Mary Birch Harmon. I will change my name on my screen in a moment. And I work directly with Education USA Brazil, but I'm currently in the US. So I've been working with them for the last 2 years, and I've gotten to work with so many wonderful Brazilian students. So I'm so glad to meet you today and to see you today. So today, we are going to do a couple different things. We are going to look at the difference between a CV and a resume. We're also going to think about what the key points are that you need to pay attention to for both of those. And then I'd like to go over how to write both your CV and your resume. And I hope to give you some time to review or to look at some example resumes and CVs so that you have a better idea. Okay? So that's my ambitious plan for this next hour. Let's see what we can do. All right, so just so you know a little bit about my teaching style, this is a webinar, but it is a chance for you to ask me questions and be interactive with me and with your classmates. So I welcome you to turn on your camera. I am a real live person, and I'm happy to see your face while we're here in this meeting together. I also allow you to ask questions. If you have questions while you're here, you can simply raise your hand or you can open up your microphone and ask your question. So I hope that you'll feel comfortable to do that while we're together and so that you can ask any question that you need to. And also, I hope that we're going to have a chance for you to work with a partner while you're here. Maybe that will happen towards the very end. And when you're doing that, you don't need to feel shy. It's just a chance to talk to someone else about this topic. All right, so I just want to also tell you a little bit about this space while we're together. This is a judgment-free zone, so we're not going to worry so much about how perfect our English is or not. We're just going to all be here to try to learn together. So if you're worried, please don't worry. I'm here to help, and there are plenty of people in the room to help you as well. So let's just see what we can learn together. So I'd like to start off by thinking about what you already know about writing your resume or your CV in English. Does anyone have any experience? And do you have any tips that you already know about? And I'm going to come back to you. What do you think? Hello, hi. You're welcome to type in the chat or you're welcome to raise your hand. Yeah, Wangley, go ahead. Hi.
Hello, MB. Nice to see
Hi,
you.
good to see you. Yeah.
Well, I tried to create my own CV in English like twice. I know like the fields, experiences, education, a summary.
Good job.
Actually, if this is a CV, I actually don't know the difference between CV and resume as well. But yeah,
Okay.
mainly these topics.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So hopefully you'll get a sense of how they're different. Yeah. Yeah. But the things that you mentioned are all mentioned in your CV and are important to pay attention to when writing your CV. You got it. Anyone else have any ideas about your CV or your resume? What do you think? Have you tried it? Are you writing it right now? Yeah? No? No thoughts? Okay. Yeah? Okay, good job. Evelyn, you're saying you did your CV when you took the MOOC for career development. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe you have a little bit of experience, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. If you're trying to write it right now, that's wonderful. I hope I can give you some tips to pay attention to. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint and we're going to look at a couple different points today. The first one is really to look at what's the difference between a CV and a resume. Okay. So I just want to make a couple different points about the differences, and hopefully you'll see pretty clearly what to focus on if you're writing either one of them. The big thing with writing a CV is that it's credential. It also has a large focus on your education. Okay. So it's going to talk a lot about your education and your research background. One of the things that it focuses on right away with a CV is talking about what degrees you have and what your research interests are. Okay? So we're going to look at how you're going to actually write it, and we're going to think about how you actually get prepared to do that. Okay? But think about CV, curriculum vitae, actually means like your whole history of your work history and your educational background. So it is much longer than a resume, and it includes a lot more information than a resume usually does. Okay. So, what you need to focus on is that it's used also for positions in academia and also for research positions or internships, anywhere where you have to show what your educational background was and what research experience you have. Okay? So, the word vitae has to do with your life. So, think about telling a lot of your history of your work and your educational background. If you can think of that when you think of CV, that's the big focus. Okay? All right. So if we think about a resume, it's a little different. And a resume is really focusing on your skills, your work skills, your work competencies. Okay. So you want to highlight those skills so that you can match to whatever job you're applying for. Okay. So it also talks about your educational background, but has a larger focus on your work experience because you want to show what jobs you've been doing that actually show these different skills. Okay? So think CV is more education and research focused. Your resume is more skill based, what skills you have at work, and more about your work history. They both include similar parts, yes, but they have a larger focus on one than the other. Okay? The other piece is that a resume is usually quite short. So usually it's one page, which means front and back. And sometimes they ask you just to get it to one page, just the front, which is almost impossible, right? Okay. But you need to highlight these different skills so that you can show your different experiences, particularly related to work. The purpose is that most jobs in the US will ask you to submit a resume, not a CV. Okay? If you're applying for a research internship or a fellowship or a grant, yes, you would have to submit your CV. But most jobs here in the US are going to ask you for your resume. Okay? So you just need to know kind of those differences. So I just want to point out that also with a resume, you usually have to submit a cover letter. And a cover letter is this personal letter that you write to the hiring committee that gets them interested in looking at your resume. So your cover letter has to tell a little bit of the story of what you've been doing. It has to be interesting enough that they will take the time to then look at your resume. Okay? So it can also explain some of the details that you cannot give a lot of story to in your resume. You can explain it in your cover letter. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Resumes and cover letters usually go together. And you want to attract the employer. You want them to keep looking. You want them to turn to the next page to find your resume, to see your experience, to know that you have different work experience. Okay? That's your goal with a cover letter. Okay? Okay. So, in thinking about what to include, we're going to go through very specifically how to write each of these, but I just want to list for you kind of what it looks like. Okay? So, with a CV, you're going to start with your personal information, and then you're going to go right into your educational background, and then you're going to talk a little bit about your research interests and any publications or presentations that you've done. And then you're going to look at your research experience or your teaching or lecturing experience. You can add all of that. And then you're going to talk about any presentations that you have, any grants, honors, or awards, any skills that you have, and then finally, any references. All right? I forgot to say, if you're busy taking notes, I do have a document for you at the end. I can also share my PowerPoint with you at the end. So you're welcome to just listen right now. I do have some information for you that I'm going to share at the very end. Okay? So we're going to look at each of these parts in more detail. But overall, your CV is going to look something like this. Sometimes the order is changed a little bit. However, each of these different parts should be included to some degree in your CV. Okay? And yes, the recording will be available. Yes, thanks for asking. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so compared to a CV, your resume is a little different. Remember, think skill-based, okay? And it's going to include your contact information, just like your CV. It's also going to start with a little bit of a summary, and I'll talk a little bit about that today. And then it's going to go right into your work experience. Okay, so think CV went right into the educational experience or background. For a resume, you're going to go right into your work experience. Then you're going to talk about your education, usually right after that. Any related skills, you're going to add them. And then you're going to talk about any other additional skills that you have, languages and proficiency. Are you skilled with different programs on the computer, things like that? You're going to add those. And then you're going to give any certifications that you have. This is coming right at the end. And finally, if you have publications and presentations, usually with a resume, it's on a separate document. Usually it is not included in the same document, okay? If your employer or whoever you're applying to asks for it, you can add it to your resume. And think about, with your resume, you're also writing a cover letter. So you're making sure that letter actually comes first. But sometimes when we write our resume, we write the resume first and then go back and write the cover letter and talk about the story, okay? All right, so something to keep in mind for both of these is to think about your resume and your CV. They are both advertisements of your best skills. So you need to think about, what do you want to highlight? What do you want an employer or someone who's giving grants? What do you want them to know about you? Okay? Or what do you want the academic institution to know about you? And you want to highlight your best points, your best research skills, your best things that you've accomplished. Okay? That's what you're trying to really zone in on and focus on when you're writing your resume and your CV. The other thing is you're trying to convince them. You're trying to convince them, please take me as your student, right? Or please hire me, right? But not please, you're trying to convince them that you are a good candidate, okay? Whether it be for research or for work, okay? So think of your resume as an advertisement about you. So think about how you're presenting those things about you, which are going to make them hire you or want to be a part of their program. You really need to stand out. If you don't know this expression, it means that you need to be above others. They need to easily see what your skills are or what your educational background is. And they need to think, oh, yes, I want this person in my program, or I want this employee to work at my institution. Okay. So you have to convince them of that. You have to show them that. Okay. And you have the power because you are organizing your resume or CV in a certain way. Okay. So think about what points are the strongest points and highlight them. Okay. So the other piece about this that I want you to think about, if some of this feels uncomfortable or if it feels kind of a little bit off to talk about yourself in a certain way, please remember it is very cultural. It is very cultural, particularly in how we present ourselves on paper. Okay? So maybe very different from what you do in Brazil. That's okay. You just have to learn how you do it in the US. Okay? And if it feels uncomfortable, don't worry. You just have to learn how to present yourself in a way that is going to play up or highlight your skills. All right? You want to make sure that you highlight your skills so that you're going to get the internship, that you're going to get the job, or whatever you're applying for. Okay? So I thought we could start first with looking at our CV. All right? And yeah, I'm going to go through each different part of it and just give you some tips to pay attention to. After we finish talking about the CV, we're going to look at the resume. And Sophia, you're asking, should you use your photo? No, you do not need to include your photo. That's a good question. You do not need to include your photo on your CV or your resume unless they ask for it. Okay? They ask for it. Otherwise, you do not have to put it. Okay? That's a good question. All right, so we're going to start off with your CV. And you're going to start with your contact information. Okay? Of course, put your full name. And then you're going to put either your telephone number, some people do it a little differently, or your email address. Please try to use your professional email address, okay? Not ilovelucy@hotmail.com, right? You want to be as professional as possible, and you want to either link it to your school or wherever you're working, okay? So this is a way to present yourself already professionally, and by using your professional email, it will show that already. And then if you have an online profile or a website that links to your research or something else that you'd like to link to in your CV, you can put that right at the beginning. So your introduction, your name, your email address, and your link to your profile can simply be all that you include in the beginning of your CV. Okay? Some people also link to their LinkedIn profile if that's something that they're adding a lot of information to, or if they want to show off more of what they're talking about now or what's current in their research. Okay? So you're going to you're going to choose these different pieces that are going to be the most representative of you and the easiest way to learn more about you. Okay? Think your name at the beginning is your introduction to you. Okay? So you want to make sure that that's really clear. Then remember, in CV, we're focusing a lot on education. Okay? So you're going to focus on your educational background, and you're going to start talking about that right away. All right? So think, for a CV, your educational background is one of the most important parts. Okay? And if you think about it visually, it's the second part, or the first part, the first big part that an employer or someone who's giving away grants is going to look at. Okay? So this part has to be really clear and easy to understand. So you want to make sure that you have your school name, your location, the title of your degree, your GPA, if that applies. Right now, there are mixed thoughts about including the dates of when you went to school. Some people who are in their middle age don't want to include their dates because they don't want to show that they're older. So I think you have to think about it for you, okay? But you have to think about how you want to present yourself, okay? Yeah, and Wangley, you're asking, would it be important to add short programs such as summer camps? So you can think about, I think I would put that in your experience part, not in your education part, I think. And we're going to talk about that in a moment, okay? So education just really highlights what pieces were related to your schooling, okay? And then there's another part that's coming up that you could highlight some of these other experiences that you have. That's what I would suggest. Yeah. Okay. And then if you have a dissertation or a thesis or a link to that, you can put that in this section. All right. If there's something that you worked on directly related to your education, you can include that here. And then any professional certificates you really want to highlight here, you can put it here. Okay. Okay. So you're talking about we should just put things that we don't put in the Common App, right? Yes. Yes. And if you think about how the CV is laid out, it's highlighting specific things. Yeah. But you can repeat some of the things that are also already presented in the Common App. Your CV sometimes works as almost like an official document because it has these different parts highlighted. This is like your personal history, right? So if they overlap, particularly with the Common App, I think that's okay. All right? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Okay. So remember, educational background, this is going to be a big highlight in your CV. It's a very important part for you to note and to pay attention to when you're writing it. Okay. So the next section is simply to list some of your research interests. Okay? So what it means is that whatever you're thinking about, so think about CV, whatever you're thinking about to do your research on, or whatever you're working on right now, you can highlight these different key points about your research by highlighting them here. That means who's ever reading your CV is going to go down quickly and find whatever you're interested in right now, or whatever you'd like to work on in the future. Okay? If you can, and you want to talk very specifically about methodologies that you use, you can also highlight that here. So think about who's going to read your CV, all right? And if they know these methodologies, then they will think, oh, this is a good match. This person knows this already. This is a good match for our program. Okay? All right. So then, if you have them, you're going to start to list any publications that you have. Okay? And publications means something that you've already published, or it also might mean something that you're working on right now. Okay? So you would include the title, the authors or the author. You would include the title of what you've written, the name or the journal or wherever it's published, a link if possible. Okay? And then if you're still working on it, if you've submitted it and it hasn't been published yet, you can note that to say that this is what you're working on. Okay? So remember, you're trying to highlight all these things that you're doing that are already in progress, that are already out there, that are going to show these strong points about your educational background, okay, or your research experience, okay? So your publications are going to back up what you talk about in your research interests. And then you're going to start to talk a little bit about what experience you have as a researcher. Okay? So you can start to talk about where you've been working, what you've been doing, what projects you've been working on, and you give a little bit of background by telling them who the employer is, where you're working, dates of employment you had, um, and any responsibilities that you were doing. So, different from a resume, this part of your professional experience leans really hard on your research experience. And in your resume, you're going to talk about your work experience. A little different, a little different. Okay? So remember, each piece here is trying to show that how it supports your educational background. Okay? Oops. Okay. And then you're going to list any teaching experience that you have. If you don't, that's okay. You don't have to include this section in your CV. You would include the title of your position and the place where you had it or the webinar where you taught, and your dates of experience. So if this is not a section on your CV, that's okay. You can leave it off. If it is, you can simply list. And what I mean is just put the title, the webinar, or wherever you taught, and the dates that you did it in a list. Okay? Your research experience before this has a little more details and is a little more robust in the sense that it tells more about what you were doing, because all of it is related to your educational background and your research. Okay? So this section might just be a list of what teaching experience you have. Speeches and webinars, I would move them into presentations. I think I would move them into presentations. I think it could go in either, actually. I think, Wengli, it could go in either. Yeah, yeah. How is that being distinguished? I think you could highlight it in either way. Yeah. That's a good question. Okay. So then, if you have presentations that you've been doing, if you're going to conferences or you're presenting online, you can list them here. You can include the title of your presentation, the name and place of the conference, and the date. And again, this is simply a list. It's usually a list. Okay? So think research experience is going to give more details. It's going to give what you were doing and some bullet points, some key points about what you did. Okay? But once you get down to talking about your presentations, talking about your publications, things like that, you're simply going to list them. All right? And it's your CV is getting longer and longer as the more you include. However, you can simply list these different pieces of it. Okay. All right. So we're getting down to the very end of your CV. And in this part, you're going to think about if you've received any honors, any awards, or any grants. Okay. And you can include some information about them here. So again, it looks somewhat like a list. It's going to include the title, the organization from which you got this award or honor, and then the year that you received it. All right. And please, highlight all the different awards or honors that you did get. Okay. You can make sure that you do that because they want to see all of these different pieces. And they want to see all these different pieces related to your research, related to your academic background. Okay? So again, you can include any award or any honor that you've received related to that. If you've done volunteer work, this is coming down to the end. If you've done volunteer work, you can also include that on your CV. It helps to show a different aspect of your experience. You could also directly relate it to what your research is about. If you volunteered to work on blah, blah, blah project, which is related to your research, you can highlight it that way. Okay? And again, you're including just the key points about it. And then once you submit your CV, they can see all of these different experiences that you have. And they're trying to think of like a well-rounded candidate for their program. Okay? All right, so we're getting right towards the very end. And with your CV at the very end, if there are things that you still want to highlight, okay, you would just include additional information like any professional memberships that you have, any computer skills that you have, any language skills that you have, and you would simply, again, list them here at the end of your CV. If you've done a special training and you want to highlight that, you can also include that in this part. Okay? And then finally, at the very end of your CV, we often include our references. And these are specific people that you've chosen to act as your reference and to verify that you have done all of these different things and to speak for you, speak positively for you. Okay? So you want to make sure you choose a reference that is strong for you and that can speak very well about what you've been doing or what research you've been doing. Okay? So you would simply include their name, the university or place of employment, whatever position title they have, I think that's it, and a contact email. Okay? So this comes right at the very end, and this shows some of your background in the sense that if they want to know more information, they can contact your references directly and learn more about you. Okay? All right, so that was a lot of information about your CV. How are we doing? How are we doing? You all right? Yeah? Yeah? Hi. I didn't know you guys were here. Hi. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to shift our gears a little bit over to talk about your resume. Okay? So think your CV is focused on your educational background and is usually used for getting a grant or getting an internship or some kind of academic position. All right? If we shift, your resume is usually used to get a position for work. Okay? So it's going to focus more on your work experience, more on your work skills. Okay? So you just have to think about how you're focusing your different skills and highlight them a little differently in your resume. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint and we're going to move on to talking about how to write your resume. And if you're just joining us, I do have a document for you at the end, which has all of this information on it. Okay, you're welcome to take notes, but I will share that with you. Okay, so a little bit different when you write your resume. Sometimes people start off by thinking about what format they want to use. And I mention this because most resumes are written chronologically. So in order, or usually reverse order of how they happened. Okay, your most recent work experience, whatever you're doing now, comes first and then goes backwards. Okay. Sometimes people write resumes based on what's called functional resumes, which means that they link their experiences related to the job that they're applying for and they highlight them together. Okay. So if you had teaching experience and then you also were a manager, you would group them differently. Okay. And that's called a functional resume, which means that you're adding this information to highlight it in a different way. And sometimes people do a combination. So, not to confuse you, I would say the easiest way is to do a chronological. Okay. It's very simple. You just simply follow the order from your work experience, from your current work experience, and work backwards. Usually, when you submit a resume, they say within the last 15 years. Okay. So as you get more experience, as you get, you're working different jobs, you don't want to go all the way back to when you first began, okay? Different from a CV. You want to start with or kind of, capture it within the last 15 years, okay? If you don't have space, if they say it's only a one side for a one-page resume, then you're going to have to take a lot of stuff out and highlight only what you're doing maybe now and your last position. Okay? So you have to think about, you have to kind of choose your format based on what they're accepting. So then you're going to do the same thing as you do in your CV. You're going to start to organize your personal information. Very similar things can be included. Of course, your full name, your telephone number, your email address, your professional email address. This one is not sunshine and snowflakes, okay? You don't want to come off as unprofessional. You want to come off as very professional so that you can be really a good candidate right from the beginning. And then if you have a link to an online portfolio, you can share that. Or if you have a link to LinkedIn, you can also share that. Okay? LinkedIn is usually used for a resume and sometimes used for a CV. Because LinkedIn is so based on work, it's not always used for a CV, but it can be. It's not wrong to do that. Okay, so a little different from a CV, you're going to start to write your introduction. And when you write your introduction, sometimes it's called your resume summary. That means right at the beginning, so your name comes up at the top, your address, different points about you, your personal history. And then it's going to go right into some key points that you want to highlight about you. All right? So in some ways, you're going to choose I'd say 2 or 3 things that you really want to point out. And you're going to put them in a short summary in a couple sentences right at the beginning. Okay? So if someone picks up your resume, they're going to see your name right away and then they're going to see these points. Remember, this is an advertisement of you. So you want to put these 2 or 3 points right at the beginning that they can see very easily. So you can talk about your interests. You can talk about projects that you're working on. You can talk about something that has been highlighted at your job, your current job. You can talk about any qualifications that you have. So you want to make these points stand out right at the beginning. And I'll show you an example. So you might say something like this. A research biologist, 15 plus years research and scholarship in the microbiology field. Okay, you're highlighting right from the start what you're focusing on. And then you're going to write as if you were talking. So I utilize I advance, I plan, I manage, okay? And you can take the I out. So you can say, utilize cutting edge lab techniques to detect microplastics in soil, something like this. You're just giving some key points that they can look at and find out about you. You got it? Okay, so this might be one example of how you would write your resume summary. Okay, so then think about different from a CV. You're going to launch right into your work experience and you're going to talk directly about what you've been doing in your current job. Okay, so the big thing here, if you don't remember anything about your resume, please remember this. You want to highlight your achievements, okay? You want to be very specific about what you've accomplished, all right? So you don't want to just list planned this and da 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 and designed this and blah blah blah. You want to say, what did you accomplish when you planned that program? What happened? What was the outcome of designing, whatever it was? Okay. So you want to talk about what achievements, what did you accomplish by doing these different things? That way, when someone reads your resume, they can easily see what the highlights are. They can easily see what you have already been working on, what you've accomplished so far. Okay. So you want to make sure that those are really clear and easy to follow. So I just want to give you an example. If you highlighted the word, like if you're working with program development or you're a program developer, okay, you're going to highlight that word and then say what you've been doing. Plan, design, and implemented, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Or something like if you're teaching, if you're doing virtual instruction, or you led a webinar or something like that, then you're going to tell a little bit of that, but you're going to say what was the achievement. Self-taught and mastered virtual teaching and led 50 different webinars on blah. Okay? So you want to make sure that your achievement piece is really key. All right. So another thing that you can do, and if you think this sounds crazy, people really do it, and it does work. You can look at the job advertisement, and you can use that to craft what you say in your resume. And yes, people change their resume. They change their resume to fit the job description. Yes, they do. Okay. So I'll show you how to do that. But you're going to start to work backwards. You're going to start with what job you're working on now, and you're going to work back. Okay? Don't go back further than 15 years. You want to keep it in this time frame. Okay? So let me show you what I mean for a moment. Does anyone have any questions so far? You okay? You okay? Yeah? Okay. So I just want to show you what I mean by that. Okay? And I will share this link with you. But if you were looking at a job advertisement, this is just a resume writing website. If you were looking at a job advertisement that looked like this, okay, and they pulled up certain words, or you could highlight certain things that the job advertisement is looking for, okay, and they're saying these really key points. They want someone who can collaborate with communications teammates. Can everybody see that? Who supports the development of marketing, blah, 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 who executes that. You can look at all these different key points, okay? And then you can start to change the language you use in your resume to match what the job description is asking for, okay? People do this. People change their resumes to match what is being said in the job description. Why do they do that? They want to show that they have the same skills that the job is looking for, Also, sometimes they use computers to find key points in your resume before a person looks at your resume. So they use computers to pick up keywords. If those keywords aren't there, then you don't go to the first, you don't get through the first round. Okay? So if you have these skills, you can use the language to fit what you say in your resume. Does everybody understand that? You okay? Yeah? So you can craft your resume to fit what the job description is talking about. All right? That's one way to do it. It's one way to do it. Okay? Because you want to increase your chances of getting to the interview. You want to increase your chances that they're going to look at your resume and say, "We want to talk to this person. We want to have this person as our employee." You got it? Okay. Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. I think for resumes and CVs, I think we use them kind of interchangeably. And even in my own experience, I think I've written CVs, but I called them a resume. So don't worry, don't worry. Um, it's a learning experience, and it's just a way to find out all these different pieces. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at the final pieces of writing your resume. So just like in your CV, you're going to include your educational section, okay? And again, you can think about if you want to include the dates or not. I recently redid my resume and I took the dates off. So you can think about it, okay? You can make a choice, all right? Because I want them to focus on my experience and not necessarily focus on how old I am. You got it? Okay. Okay. So the next section is going to highlight any skills that you have. We talk a little bit about hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills are specific abilities that you have and specific things, specific trainings that you have that are related to the job. Soft skills are more things that you're about your character, that you are a good team player, that you are culturally sensitive, whatever it is. Those are considered soft skills, still important, and you can highlight them at the end of your resume. Okay. So if you have any awards or specific certifications or any honors, you want to highlight them right at the end of your resume. You can simply list them, just like you would in your CV. You can also add any publications or presentations. Usually in a resume, this is a separate document. Okay, so you would add this or you would ask if it could be included in your resume, and it would be on the kind of a separate document included in your resume. Not every employer is going to want to look at that. They might just want to look at your work skills. So you can think about how best to present that, and you can think about whether to include it or not. All right. So then you can think about what template to use. I would say for both CVs and resumes, there are a lot of different templates out there. There are a lot of free templates out there that you can look at and think about how to present your information. Okay? And then if you're writing your resume, you're going to think about what to put in your cover letter. I wish we had more time and I could tell you more about that. But this is a separate personal letter that you're writing to the hiring committee or to the director or whoever is the person that's looking for an employee. And you're going to tell a little bit more of your story. And you want to convince them to look at your resume. All right, finally, for both of them, I didn't say it with your CV, but for both of them, please make sure that you proofread and edit. There is a lot of information included in both of these. So I would just make sure that you're really clear and that you really pay attention to making sure that everything is spelled correctly and that your grammar is correct, because these things will be noticed. All right. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah, sure. 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 Any questions? You okay? Okay. So I wanted to show you a couple different examples of websites that you might look at, okay, that have some example CVs, have some example resumes that you can look at and see, how you might go about writing. So one of them is, sorry, here we go. Here we go. One of them is, this is simply focusing on the difference, okay? But this website does give you CV templates and gives you some samples. I will include this in the chat for you, okay? So you can take a look. This website also, this is also called the Balanced Careers. They also give you different templates. And this is specifically about CVs, some tips to look at when you're writing your CV, okay? So I'm going to share those links with you right now. Does anyone have any questions? You're welcome to type in the chat if you're not feeling very brave about speaking up. Yeah? Any thoughts? Yeah? Anyone have any questions? You okay? Yeah. So Daniel's asking about if the cover letter can be included in the email or as a separate letter. I would say it could be included in the email. You could pretend that the email is actually your cover letter space. And what you want to do is you want to encourage them, convince them to get to your resume. Okay? So you can attach your resume to the email after that. Okay? But yes, you could use it as a way to encourage them to read your resume, right? To take the next step. Okay? Okay, I'll show you one more link. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah, sure. I can share the PowerPoint, of course. Yeah, yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Yeah? Okay. So before you go, it's just about time to go. I just want to share with you. I will share with you the PowerPoint, of course, but I just want to share with you a document that I prepared. Okay. So what I do when I get ready for a webinar is I take everything from the PowerPoint and I put it on a document so you'll have it. So this is almost exactly what I talked about in the PowerPoint, okay? And I just want to point out for you at the very end, I always include, you'll see it right here, part 4, I always include resources that I was looking at as I prepare for these different webinars, okay? So I hope that they will give you more information about these different aspects. And they're just links that you can click on to learn more about writing your CV, writing your resume, and I also include some about writing your cover letter. And always at the end, this is my contact information. I do teach other webinars. I'd love to see you again, but you're welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions, okay? So I'm going to share this document with you in the chat. And if you don't have any questions, and I can put the PowerPoint in the chat for you. It'll take a moment to download. If you're not able to see either of those documents, you may private message me if you want your email address, and I will send everything to you after this class. Okay? Yeah? I think the PowerPoint is just downloading. It's taking a moment. So if you'd like to share your email address with me, you can do that, and I will go ahead and send that to you right after class. Yeah? 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 Okay, I will send it to you. Don't worry. Yeah. All right, everyone. So thank you so much for coming today. Education USA Brazil is going to share the recording. I'm sorry, I'm not sure where, but you can reach out to them and find out where they're going to put it. I look forward to seeing you maybe again. I do teach other webinars, so I hope that you'll come back and say hello. Okay? Have a wonderful rest of your day. Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day. See you. Bye. Yeah. Yeah. Hi. How are you?